Hello and welcome to Campaign Talk. I'm your host, Mark Belshaw, and in this edition of Campaign Talk, we'll be taking a look at our military and the looming threat of conscription, as well as the latest developments in Rochdale with the launch of the party's second office. To talk about the state of our military and bring us up to date on the topic of conscription, I'd like to welcome Mick Stott to the broadcast. Welcome, Mick.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks for the invite.
It's fantastic to have you. Now, before we get started on conscription, Mick, you were a regular host on the No Conscription League broadcasts. For those that haven't seen them, can you tell us about yourself?
I mean, yeah, my background is I was a martial artist at a very young age, and I joined the military because of my martial arts, and I ended up becoming an Army Physical Training Corps instructor, which meant that I spent the best part of 30 years preparing people physically and mentally to fight war. And so every eventuality of that, one of my other specialisms whilst I served was to design training and implement it and validate it for efficiency. And of course, some of the things that I wrote are still used by the services today. When I resigned my commission in 2004, I took a couple of jobs, one at the Military Academy Sandhurst, and I worked with a number of universities. I specialised in mindset and went into international sport and worked all over the world with business as well. What I then created was a system for mental health. And that's really where I sit now. I specialise in mental health.
Well, it sounds like you've got plenty of experience to be able to inform our listeners and ourselves about the current ongoings with the British military. But before we pick your brains about the military and about conscription, we'll just take a quick look at a recent conscription video from Ukraine.
Пошел, упаковочка. Ох! Давай.
Не трогайте його!
Now, during many Conscription League broadcasts with yourself, many of these types of videos have been featured, and the number that we can see on social media has only increased as the war in Ukraine has dragged on. You, yourself, help people with PTSD, which many of us normally associate with people within the armed forces. But what are the effects, do you think, this sort of forced conscription has on family members and those watching members of their family being assaulted and accosted, only to be thrown into the meat grinder at the front lines?
Well, you know, it's interesting because you can post-traumatic stress disorder is a term that's a panacea for your life coming to pay you a visit when you step over a threshold. So you might end up on military operations, you could have a road traffic accident, you might have a baby, you know, and that then sort of allows your life to come to the fore because that's the straw that's broken the proverbial camel's back. But essentially PTSD is life. And of course, if you look at recruitment in the military, the demographics that we're often recruited from, then some of those demographics are not from necessarily very well-rounded backgrounds. And of course, that then plays its role as we go forwards in life. The military provides a great family. And in one way, but they do say that one volunteer is worth 50 pressed men. So the idea or even concept of conscription is interesting at best, because when you look at the current demographics of young people, you know, I monitor with all the trainings that I do, the nature and the robustness and resilience of young people these days. And of course, I'm bound to say this because I'm an old coffin dodger on some levels, but I'm bound to say it because I say they don't make them like they used to, and that's the cry of the old, isn't it? So So the concept of conscription is is a very interesting one. And of course, trauma, when we go on operations and we come back from trauma, Mark, when we come back from operations, Mark, we expect to be welcomed and we expect to be treated in a way that reassures us that what we did was for our country, essentially, king and country, queen and country. I personally don't buy into some of those elements anymore, because I think it's misplaced loyalty in lots of ways. When you start to explore who gets paid for wars, who creates wars, who benefits from wars, then that tends to change what's important to you. But the trauma element of it can't be underestimated. If you take Vietnam as an example, when the Vietnam veterans came back, they were vilified as child killers and weren't welcomed back into their societies. Needless to say that as you look at all of the operations with British forces, the number of suicides often account for more people than actually died in that conflict. And of course, the count still goes on. I deal regularly with those types of situations. It might surprise you to know that there are over 1,000 veteran charities that were established by veterans, because, to be fair, the system that is out there to help veterans is woefully inadequate at the level of treatment. So when you look at someone that decides that they're going to go into conflict, that's a completely different concept to being forced to go into a conflict. And then the resultant PTSD, wherever you drop a father back into a family with post-traumatic stress disorder, the ripples of that trauma are naturally going to play out. And of course, those can be devastating and long-lasting. So I think the concept of mental health, or even the idea of mental health, the impact on mental health, is going to be huge. But I also have some suspicions about what's going on in the country that I'll share with you as the programme unfolds.
Well, you yourself, as an army captain, I'm sure you've come across many soldiers who've both been in war, been in combat situations, suffered from PTSD from it. But when we're looking at the comparison between professional soldiers and conscripts, who are your regular average everyday Joes who are being picked up off of the streets in Ukraine, bundled into the back of a van and taken straight to the front lines, where in some situations the life expectancy is about a week for the average Ukrainian soldier. So how well do you think that, for example, the man that we showed in the clip earlier would do on the front line? And is there any sort of hope for those sorts of people when they are just deposited on the front line and just left to their own devices?
You have to look at our upbringing, and of course there was a part of the schooling system that changed and started to involve emotional intelligence, or EQ. And part of that was letting young men know that it's okay to cry, it's okay to be emotional. And I think in some ways we've probably gone too far left of arc, because we're now in a situation where some guys are more concerned about the way their hair looks than they are actually turning into a man, if you like. You only need to look at the current situation with unemployment. I mean, how many of these young people have not actually been treated robustly enough to even enter the employment market? So all of these, if you look at education per se, there was a shift in it's okay to participate. It's not, it doesn't matter if you win. Well, it actually doesn't matter if you win in life, because nobody remembers anyone who comes second, and that sounds a little bit brutal. But equally in life, if you're not prepared to compete, then you end up being caught somewhere in the backwash of those people that then can enter a situation where they blame the rest of the world for everything that's happening to them, but haven't really done anything about that. Now, I also understand that some people do not have the capacity to work, or do not have the capacity to step over that threshold. But I don't think our educational system actually encouraged that. And, when we're now encouraging some of our children to be Furbies and other imaginary creatures, and to take on that kind of mantle in an educational world, then that's never going to help either. Now, if you take this person that's very emotionally intelligent and you put them in a high-pressure environment, guess what? You're either going to sink or swim. The military machine, when I joined, was about making you robust and about making you resilient. It was about giving you a home, giving you a sense of belonging, They generated esprit de corps. You earned everything that you got, and you had to prove yourself physically and mentally to be worthy of what they gave you. It's a shame some of our politicians are not tested in that way, because some of them wouldn't survive 2 weeks of that journey, especially given the nature of what's going on in the UK at the moment. So conscription, for me, I also have a take on conscription that's based on the fact that Keir Starmer seems to love putting up smoke screens and also scaring people, because some of his popularity is not exactly where he would like it to be at this moment in time. But for me, none of that's by chance. You can't tell me that someone that's intelligent as he is doesn't know what he is doing in terms of bringing the country down.
Certainly, and it's not just in the UK as well. I think you've had Merz in Germany has also been raising the idea of forcibly conscripting young Germans to go and fight in a potential war with Russia. And this seems to be across Europe to the point where the war hawks seem to be pushing for war and a push for the younger generation to fight it. But at the same time, they seem to have completely decimated their own societies to the point where they can't recruit enough people to join the army, both out of the fact that there aren't enough people who are physically fit to join the army, who are of fighting age, or who are mentally capable to join the army, who are at fighting age. And even in the United States, I think you even have to look even at just the level of recruitment in the police in the United States, or the level of recruitment in the Met, that they aren't able to recruit enough competent even police officers, that they've had to lower the standards to such an extent that you'll usually see a pudgy Bobby running about the streets trying to catch people who are clearly fitter than they are. So it seems like it's a complete degradation of society, and they're just, rather than fixing it, seem to be going for the short-term solution and just chucking people into the meat grinder who clearly aren't fit physically or mentally for that. But in regards to, say, morale, if you have conscripts who are both physically and mentally not capable to withstand the stresses of war, could you see increased defections, desertions, or even examples that you saw in the Vietnam War during conscription of soldiers turning on their own officers, which I believe, I think the term for that is fragging?
And of course, if there's an old saying, select hard, train easy. And the more we sweat during training, the less we bleed when we're fighting. But you need the right person to do that. You need the right material to use to create that. And of course, with the advent of EQ and some of the other issues, if you look at the recruitment drive that was done by the British Army for 2025, they looked at 198,000. They haven't got anywhere near that. And of course, this is why they're trying to come up with strategies. But meanwhile, back at the ranch, because Keir Starmer is playing a world game, that the best thing to do is to keep the home population busy. And the best way to keep somebody busy is to make them scared. And of course, if you start putting out these feelers for conscription, that will preoccupy someone's mind more than anything. There's nothing specific about it. So let's use the art of hypnosis, which is to be artfully vague in our message. Or we might do, this could happen, and this is who it might involve, may involve. So there's nothing precise about it. So no one gets any clear direction. But what it does is it starts to hang around the minds of young people that wouldn't know what a fight was if it bit them on the backside.
As well, there's this attempt, there's almost an in-between point between, conscription and the professional armed forces now, which was announced in a recent report where the armed forces are discussing the possible idea of a gap year scheme for young people to bolster, skills and leadership for under 25-year-olds and for them to experience what life in the armed forces is like. And do you really think that sort of thing will improve the chances of people being recruited to the army? Do you think that sort of training that might be on offer would actually be effective, and what can actually be achieved in a so-called gap year in the armed forces?
Well, you have to look at how advertising changed. So they used to, I don't know if you remember the series of adverts, I can't remember exactly when it was, but it's Where's Johnny? And it would show Johnny on a windsurfer the other side of the world enjoying the sun and windsurfing. Then it'd show him in a kayak, then it'd show him skiing. What I then realised was that was false advertising. And of course, what then happened was one of the big, I've got to be careful what I disclose, but one of the big exercises, Saif Saria, when they decided to go into combat, when they decided to arm the troops that were out there because of one of the operations out in the east came live, there were a number of people within units that threatened suicide. Unheard of in the British forces. And that was as a result of misleading advertisements. And of course, now, if you look at the advertisements, it always contains a level of military operations. So there's a reality sandwich on some levels. But let's face it, Mark, right? What you think something's going to be and what it actually is can be two completely different things. No surprises that when the British forces go away and they go on operations and they come back, that a considerable percentage of them, they leave because the reality was not what the imagination was. And there's nothing exciting about those environments. Now, if you add that to the fact, if you look at Soldier F pursued for actions on Bloody Sunday, how long ago was that? So you're not even safe when you come back, and let's face it, these guys that were, look at the IHAT investigations, £8.2 million spent on solicitors that were just making money investigating British soldiers from Iraq. Now, we do have rules of engagement, but anyone that's been in that kind of environment would know that it's not as simple as that. Even under small amounts of pressure, we go from thinking beings to emotional responders. And of course, it's the soldier that makes the decision, but it's then the human being that comes back with that decision and has to then suffer the consequences. So when you're going away on operations and you're giving your all and you're getting involved, and then you come back and you're not quite sure whether you're going to be investigated, that would not light me up. And I think young people now they're a lot more informed. So they're not as blinkered. When I joined the military, I had a certain blinkered view, but I didn't have access to social media. So the young people are going, why would I want to go there? And that's the reason that they would have to conscript, because people wouldn't go willingly. And then you get an army like the British Army that was always volunteer, after post-conscription, volunteer. And that's what made it one of the most professional armies in the world. When I worked at the military academy, we were literally the model for officer training. And having worked at some of the universities with the young people, you start to realise just how much more educated they are now and how much more aware they are now compared to where we were. So I
think part of that is also the idea that, again, I don't want to disparage social media a bit, but the stuff that comes across it where you can see live what is going on in conflict zones around the world, that this a narrative of being able to have, the mainstream media have a stranglehold on what the population can see and what real combat is actually like, rather than, a BBC journalist in a safe zone 100 miles away from anything, filming a local base or something. Now you've got people who are taking in videos on their cell phones, whether that be people who are on deployment, whether that be the local citizens or anyone really, where you're able to see what's going on in Lebanon, what's going on in Syria, what's going on the ground in Iran at the moment, where you're able to see what's going on in Venezuela. You're actually able to get a much more first-hand account of what war actually is. And I think many people have kind of seen much of the combat footage, whether it's Ukraine and Russia, Israel and Palestine, that it's very much not for them. And the narrative that the mainstream is kind of putting out is very much it's not able to convince enough of people. So even then, when you've got people who can't meet the requirements physically and mentally, and then the remnants that you've got left are saying, well, why would I put my neck on the line? I mean, you have to look at the salaries that people are getting. If you join the armed forces, you can be like, well, I can put my neck on the line and get paid the same amount as a middle manager in the private sector or in the civil service or anywhere else in the public sector. You're
private,
like,
Mark.
well,
you could be a private
I know.
and only 26k.
But it's like many people are looking at it and thinking, well, why would I do that? Like, I think some of the starting salaries are around 30 grand. And it's like many other places you can get a much more lucrative career with a lot less risk to both life and limb. So do you think any of these initiatives will be successful, or do you think that there will actually be any sort of young people taking it up long term, or is it very much a flash in the pan and a desperate attempt to get people in?
It's funny because if you look at when they what was the film that what was it called? With the jets in America, Fast Gun, was it?
Like Top Gun or something.
Top Gun.
Volleyball and all that sort of stuff.
When they put Top Gun out, recruitment went up unbelievably because it's all bravado and bluff. But when your boots are on the ground, and you're actually living in a hole in the ground for a number of weeks in preparation for something, you start to get a rough idea of what it's not. And of course, living in the field, when I first joined, we would have 12 weeks living in, minus 18 out in Germany, or on an engineer concentration, or some similar exercise. And there is nothing fun about that. And that's not the real deal. That's preparation. So I would say that because of social media and because of the amount of information, a lot of young people would go, well, why would I want to do that? Even if you said to them, sleep out in the back garden one night, a lot of them would sort of balk at that. Never mind being forced to do it and being forced to march. And of course, being a soldier is not just as straightforward as, oh, yeah, well, you hold a weapon and you shoot it. There's an awful lot of conditioning and training that goes with it. You join and you do basic training, and you'll do special to arms training. Those are only like 14-week periods at each. But you're not a soldier at that point. And you think that's tough. But in reality, it's the easiest part of being a soldier that you'll ever do. Because when you get into the real army and you start to do some of the other stuff, then you can put basic training into context, because it's nothing compared to operations.
Well, I think there's some examples of that when you had the early years of the Ukraine war back at the start of 2022. You had many people who were volunteering for the international brigades and all that sort of stuff. Even I think there was a couple of members of the British former armed forces and former special forces as well who went there, and they only lasted a couple of months before they came back. And I'm sure there was a quote from one of them who said, "Oh, we haven't been in a war where we didn't have air superiority," and that is a completely different kettle of fish. When, as you say, some people in Afghanistan, if you get pinned down, you can call someone to bail you out. You could call a helicopter or a plane or something. Whereas in Ukraine, the Russians are the ones with the air supremacy. If you're pinned down, you are pinned down.
Look at warfighting now. If you look at how warfighting's changed, look at drone warfare.
Yes, and the drone war is another thing we've all seen on social media.
You're not even going to know that you're being tracked. You're not even going to know what hit you. And of course, I can say this to you, your life expectancy out in that theatre, I reckon, is pretty negligible.
Yes, certainly. And I think
if the Russians really turned it on, you'd find out just how much firepower they have. I mean, look at all of our armaments that we sent out to Ukraine, which was a big bluff, Mark, because if you look at the EU defence strategy, which came live on the 1st of January 2025, that was already a done deal by three guys, Brockbank, Langley and Robbins at the London School of Economics. And they bragged how they cheated the Brexiteers by the use of flowery language. And of course, this was a really hot potato. And the brigadier that led us into the Falklands conflict, the commander that led that armed force there, he tried his best. Major General Campbell tried his best to say, we've lost our sovereignty. Now, all you're seeing is the tail end of what was agreed to a long time ago. So when you see Keir Starmer saying, oh, yeah, well, we're going to re-engage and we're going to do this, that was a done deal a while ago. It's just that nobody's actually told anyone about it. And, that's very well documented. It was the biggest hot potato in Parliament. No one would talk about it. And, of course, they won't talk about it because, let's face it, there is a bigger authority that is guiding their hand. So when I see stories about Sadiq Khan possibly being the next Prime Minister, it's already been decided. I don't believe at all that is a process that puts him there because of his competence. It puts him there because of his compliance to a higher authority. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Certainly. I think there's very much people behind the scenes pulling the strings who've got much more vested interests, and a lot of it is very much money making. I mean, it's no surprise you see many of the top brass in the British Armed Forces, once they leave, they end up in the private arms companies and lobbying Parliament, what have you. So that sort of stuff is it's very much in our face at this moment. But in regards to what was announced last week with Starmer, he's declared declaration of intent of putting boots on the ground with a deployment, quote unquote, deployment of forces to Ukraine and to build protected facilities for weapons and military equipment. So we'll just take a quick look at that video.
Today, we signed a declaration of intent on the deployment of forces to Ukraine in the event of a peace deal. This is a vital part of our ironcast commitment to stand with Ukraine for the long term. It paves the way for the legal framework under which British, French and partner forces could operate on Ukrainian soil, securing Ukraine's skies and seas and regenerating Ukraine's armed forces for the future. We discussed these issues in detail today, and so I can say that following a ceasefire, the UK and France will establish military hubs across Ukraine and build protected facilities for weapons and military equipment to support Ukraine's defensive needs. And with our coalition partners, we've also agreed significant further steps. First, that we will participate in US-led monitoring and verification of any ceasefire. Second, we will support the long-time provision of armaments for Ukraine's defence. And third, we will work towards binding commitments to support Ukraine in the case of a future armed attack by Russia. This is all about building the practical foundations on which peace would rest.
So Kremlin officials, including President Putin, have said that any foreign troops on Ukraine soil would be considered a legitimate military target for Russian forces. So what could possibly go wrong with that, Mick?
Well, if you want to see what boots on the ground will look like, just ask yourself how many coffins you've got available or body bags, because that would be, for me, the net result of that. Let's not kid ourselves. Russia haven't really shown off all of the firepower. They haven't. I don't believe they got as serious as they could get yet. But I also believe that I think that some of this is huff and bluff. I think that Keir Starmer is utilising this to keep out all of these young people, all of the people in the UK. If you think your son is going to go to Ukraine, how happy are you going to be as a family? It will keep you hypnotised whilst he sneaks in digital ID and CBDC. That's his biggest plan. His biggest plan is digital ID. Anything that can hide all of the little shifts that he's creating. It's almost like a ratcheting effect of what he's doing at the level of laws, at the level of legislation. Look at trial by jury. One of our basic rights to be tried by your peers. And of course, they even renamed that jury trial. Jury trial is the wrong term. Trial by jury is the way it was set up and has been since it was created. And of course, that's one of our basic rights. You know, I could list all of the other rights that have been smashed away. I mean, if, for instance, digital ID, you can't work without digital ID. Well, actually, one of your inalienable rights, given to you by God, not a government, by the way, because governments are meant to serve us by the use of consent. But one of our rights is to be the capacity to work and feed your family. The government don't give you that right. So how can he take that away? But the problem with people is they believe him. And I would say don't comply. Because the only way you stop someone from doing this, if everyone in the UK decided, I'm not doing that, it wouldn't happen. It's as simple as
Certainly. And I think, as you say, it's very much bluster and bravado on the part of Keir Starmer. And I think even just everyday people, I mean, usually you get the people who are politically engaged, knowing what's going on in regards to politics, and most people tend not to care too much. But now it seems like it's so in your face. And the actions that have been taken are so, like, if you said, oh, well, we're potentially, you know, changing jury service or something like that, the usual rhetoric around it, people might not have paid more attention to it. But when they say, right, you're going to have digital ID, you're going to have conscription, we're going to get rid of jury service, we're going to crack down on social media, we're going to ban X, we're going to track you down and arrest you for comments that you've made, whether in person or online. You're going to have protest laws are going to be stricken, where you're getting people arrested for just holding signs. I think there was one where it was a guy was holding a blank sign as King Charles went past, and he was detained and beaten for the fact of he could have potentially had something offensive on it. Like the fact that this is all coming to head. And it's so blatant in front of people that even everyday people who aren't interested in politics and who may have even voted Labour at the last election absolutely despise Starmer.
Well,
But I do feel like at the same time, it has to be said again and again that it isn't just Starmer.
No.
Because at the moment, it could be a potential that Labour might be trying to get him to be a bit of a scapegoat. And when all the flack is on him, they'll ditch him, get someone else in and pretend that they had nothing to do with any of it. So we need to kind of keep up the pressure that this isn't just Starmer himself. This is both the Conservatives and
Mark,
Labour.
you're dead right. You're dead right. Because the only reason I joined the Workers' Party, by the way, is because the only man telling the truth is George. And he's not shy at telling the truth. That's why he never appears on mainstream TV. How can Starmer tell Ofcom what to do if it's supposed to be an objective body? And of course, Ofcom is part of the problem. They don't want the dissemination of all this information coming back to people via X. It's pretty obvious. But guess what? If enough of these young people actually said no, if they all said no, what would they do?
Certainly. I think that's just got to be the thing where people put their feet down and just say
no.
Enough is enough. We're not going.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that you can possibly do. And at this moment in time, I mean,
and
in
I've got to be
regards
honest with you,
to democracy and
I would
voting.
actively encourage it. I would actively encourage it because they don't know what they're walking into.
And this is something that can unite people both on the left and the right, quite frankly. I mean, you've got some people who are voting for reform, a lot of people who are voting for reform, who are opposed to digital ID, who are opposed to conscription, who are opposed to all this sort of stuff. And it's, by the sounds of it, it's the centre ground, it's the Labour and the Conservatives that are very much behind this. I mean, at the moment, the Conservatives are now critiquing it somewhat, but of course, when they were in power, as is usually the case, fully supporting all this sort of stuff, they've effectively just given a bit of a mouthpiece to cover their own arse, I think is the term, to put it politely.
I think the young people of this country, Mark, have seen enough on social media for them to say, no, you're all right, that's not for me. And I really think that you are literally, and of course, this little division politics where we pitch Muslim against Christian, one of the oldest tricks in the book, divide and conquer, another smokescreen. Look at the introduction of LGBTQ plus versus straight versus black versus white. All division politics designed to create smokescreens. When people actually focus off who is shaking the jar. So for me, whoever is shaking the pot, that's where we put our focus, and it's always politicians. And unfortunately, that's the only reason that they're on TV. I have a simple premise. If a politician ends up on being a main feature on mainstream television, he's part of their plan. And it's not Starmer's plan, it's the World Economics plan, the World Economic Forum's plan.
Certainly. Finally, Mick, I do want to thank you for your time, and I just want to bring up in regards to conscription again. There was a recent article in the Daily Mirror over the weekend with the headline, "Conscription Ages for Women in UK if World War III Starts," as quote-unquote Putin's pal lists Europe targets. Now, the idea is that, hypothetically, of course, we could get conscription, but it won't be, the usual able-bodied men who will be going to fight. It'll be pretty much anyone that they can get their hands on, whether it be men, whether it be women, whether that they might lower the standards, be someone who's physically impaired, someone who's mentally impaired. Like, there is this debate that the Mail includes is whether, if women are conscripted alongside men, what ages will there be? What rules will possibly be affected? What do you make of this idea that they're pretty much they're not going to leave any particular person behind? They're going to send everyone in.
Even with a gender, we talked about gender-free or gender-fair testing when I was in the military. And of course, we talked about gender-free. Gender-free would never work, because if a female soldier was asked to carry the same as a male soldier at the extreme levels, it just wouldn't happen. And so we came into gender-fair testing, which meant that it was comparably measured. So if you think of that just on its own as a very difficult thing to implement, and given the fact that they're talking about just recruiting anyone, the sinister element of this, from my perspective, is that with the current advent of drone warfare, who's going to be fighting who? I mean, if you wanted, this could be a remote war. Does that make sense? I mean, an Apache helicopter can hover 15 kilometers away from its target. So what I'm saying is that all you'd simply be doing is putting people on the ground and bringing body bags back. That's all you would be doing. And of course, for me, that's that's almost a sign of depopulation, because if you know you're going to do that, if you know you're just going to kill people, there must be a purpose in why you're doing it. Why would you do it if you know that it's going to be catastrophic? Because you can't tell me that these people don't have access to generals and brigadiers that sort of say, well, that's a bit of a stupid move, Prime Minister. You know, so...
It feels very much like, if you look at the war in Ukraine, it does very much feel like a repeat of the First World War, where it is lions led by donkeys, where it's static warfare for years on end, until potentially there's going to be a breakthrough at one point. But in the meantime, you've effectively got men who are just sat holding territory, waiting to get hit by an artillery shell or an airstrike or a drone, and you're just sitting ducks waiting to see what happened. Like you say, most of the stuff now is remote. It's artillery, it's drones, it's aircraft, all that sort of stuff. But like, in regards to what we've seen, say, in the Ukraine conflict, how does our armed forces compare? And can you remind our viewers how well or ill-equipped our armed forces actually are?
Well, look at the armaments we've given away, and of course there's an amalgamation now. I don't know if you've noticed; it's very subtle. But do we have an armed force? We don't actually have a sovereign force anymore. So it's an erroneous question, really, because we don't have a sovereign force. With the UK defence, with the EU defence strategy, that dissolved our sovereign force. We no longer choose in our own right what we enter with, what we engage with, and what we don't engage with. That's an appearance. It's rubbish. How could we be so collaborative with the UN? And how could we be so collaborative with some of the EU defence mechanisms? We don't even have autonomy over what we buy at the level of our procurement. So that was one of the 8 elements of that strategy that we're signed up to. The other one was deployment. So where do we deploy? Who tells us where we're deploying? So we're now told by oligarchs that were never elected in Brussels where to go and who to fight. And we don't have the right to say no, because we're part of that strategy. And of course, the rest is just huff and bluff.
And I think as well, like you said, going back to a bit previously, that the procurement side of things, if you look at, say, I think there was the Palestine action when they spray painted one of the jets.
Yeah.
I think what that revealed was the fact that that jet and a number of the other jets that they'd vandalised were not actually owned by the RAF. They were owned by like an insurance company, and that the RAF paid them a certain amount to rent them back off of them. So we didn't even own our own planes. Then you look at the nuclear deterrent. Our nuclear deterrent is pretty much American, that we effectively rent the Americans for. And if Trump wanted to, like tomorrow or the next week or something, he could say, give us our Trident missiles back. And suddenly the UK would be left without a nuclear deterrent. And this is all sorts of, like, there's other situations where you've had procurement issues where a company, we've spent billions of pounds of taxpayers' money, and then 20, 30 years later, what we've been expecting either hasn't been delivered at all, or is sub-quality, or because it's taken so long, the tech in the equipment we've just bought is now outdated. So we're effectively just turning the military into this slush fund for private contractors, where, as I mentioned earlier in the call, that you're getting the top brass are getting lobbied by private military companies, and are then getting poached by them, and then lobby whoever comes in to replace them. And it's this never-ending cycle where taxpayers' money, I mean, it's worse in the United States, where I think Trump's announced they're going to increase the budget to $1.5 trillion, and the Pentagon has never passed an audit. They don't even know where most of this money is going. So it is very much a slush fund for oligarchs and contractors.
Ukraine, Mark, is the biggest money laundering exercise I've ever seen in my lifetime. It's a money laundering.
Again, like Ukraine, even then, Julian Assange raised the idea that the Afghan war is effectively one big rip-off of the American and British taxpayers.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was like something like 97, 98% of the money that was spent in Afghanistan to quote-unquote help to like defeat the Taliban and rebuild the country, it went missing. And we don't know where it went, but all the people who were in the Afghan government are all living in mansions and penthouses in Qatar and Dubai.
Yeah.
So I think there's a good idea of where some of that money might have gone. But again, I thank you, Mick, for attending, and I would just like to get your last opinion on this. Do you think that Britain is on the road to conscription?
I think it's a great big smoke screen. I think there'll be an alternative plan that the people in the World Economic Forum will implement via whoever takes over as our Prime Minister. I think George coined the term when he said two cheeks of the same arse.
I think that's a fantastic way to end it there, Mick.
Yeah.
Fantastic having you on. And again, we would love to have you back on again for anything in regards to conscription or military, anything like that.
Thank you.
Again, thank you for attending the broadcast this evening.
Cheers. Thank you. Yeah.
Our next guest is a regular of ours. He's doing wonders in the Northwest. It's Waqar Khan, our relentless prospective election candidate for Central Ward in Rochdale. Welcome, Waqar.
Thank you for having me again, Mark. It's a pleasure as always.
It's always fantastic to have you on, Waqar. Now, the Workers' Party is doing great in the Northwest and none greater than in the town of Rochdale, where we have not one, but two party offices now. Here's some of the footage of the opening of our second party office there.
Guys, thank you all very much for coming here. We mark a great moment here, the second opening of the Workers' Party office. We've got one on Drake Street. This is the second branch in the Central Ward. It's a proud moment for us, and we've got two champions here with us today. We've got Ellie and we've got this wonderful young lady. And they're here not only to represent the pride we have in Rochdale and the inspiration we all get from these champions, but it's a message to Labour. We're here to knock you out. And we've got the champions.
Now, we've already got one office, Waqar. So what's the purpose of the new office?
So, Mark, to be fair, we outgrew our office on Drake Street. There were so many activities taking place. There was election campaigns being ready. There was other activities such as women's groups being ready in there. We had women's makeup classes ready in there. So there was so many different elements that we did have within the office. But because that we didn't have that much space left, especially for my central ward, because we have many people coming to these offices. So we opened a branch office, which was on Yorkshire Street. The purpose of opening that office was so we can interact more local people. They can get the caseworks done. They can come in for any additional help, and hence why we needed more space. So we outgrew our Workers' Party HQ on Drake Street, and we opened a sub-branch on Yorkshire Street for our local residents. This is not my office. This is for the local residents. It's their office, and it's a hub for them to come to.
Sounds fantastic. And then you're already conducting surgeries in the new office already?
Yeah, surgeries. What we used to do originally was that we used to call people Drake Street, and because so many people are elderly, some people don't have the transport, some people just feel uncomfortable going all the way up to Drake Street. So now that they've got a local place where they can come to us, our local councillor is also conducting these surgeries with myself. I take on any surgeries that are relevant as a prospective candidate, but obviously I pass them details on to our local councillor who deals with all the casework. Hence, there's other things that we do also elaborate on, such as when somebody needs any help with form filling, any translation, just general needs, and we are a voice and we are there to represent our community.
Mm-hmm. And of course, there's been so much community-based stuff going on in the first Rochdale office, as you've mentioned. But of course, it's incredible to hear all the community activities that have been going on in Rochdale. What are the plans for any new types of activities that will be going on in the new one?
Yeah, there's many ideas being put forward with the local residents. To be fair, I wanted to put things forward. One idea of mine was to feed the homeless, because I want to give something back to the community. We set up a charity which is organised by the Workers' Party of Rochdale, especially the Central Ward. We set up a gazebo. We were feeding the homeless. We were feeding the elderly. So we do charity events as well. But other than that, there's local residents who have approached myself, come to the office and said, look, we want ladies groups set up there. We want cooking classes set up there. We want, if somebody wants help with the theory classes, for the driving, set up that up. Some elderly don't know English, so we can help them out with, obviously, like I said before, forms filling up, other translations. Maybe they've got doctor's appointments and they want to, they want some help, obviously protecting the data protection, or giving them kind of information what is required from the doctors. So they just need a bit of a shoulder to hold on to, and that's the shoulder that we are providing.
And as just one example, I believe you have an individual there who is an outstanding member of the local community. Would you be able to introduce them for us?
Yeah, it's fantastic, Aisha Rafiq, and I would like her to have the pleasure of introduce herself. I have so much. Do you know what? To be fair, I'm sitting next to it. It's just a privilege to be even sitting next to a local hero. So me personally, I don't have the words to describe her. So what I'll do is I'll pass you on to her, Mark. She did come into the office, and I spoke to her parents and said, "Look, I know she's a child. With your consent, is there any chance Aisha can have a quick chat with Mark? Because I want people to recognize Aisha, because I think she's an unsung hero of Rochdale. The medals that she's going to show you, the introduction she's going to give you, her history that she's going to give you, and at the age of 12 or 13, I'd be perfectly honest with you, nobody can do. So without further ado, I will introduce Aisha Rafiq.
Hello, Aisha. Welcome to the show. Can you tell us a bit about yourself?
Hi, it's nice to meet you, Mark. It's really nice to have this opportunity as well to come into the office and meet all the others in the workers' office. So I'm a 13-year-old martial artist who's recently gone to the World Championships in Oslo. And it was a really nice experience, to be honest.
That's fantastic. I remember Waqar mentioned as well that you've won some medals. Would you be able to show some of the medals you've won?
Of course.
Wow, that's fantastic. That's quite a haul you've got there.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So so you're saying you were in Oslo for the World Championships?
Yeah.
That's fantastic to hear. That's fantastic. Yeah. And how old were you again?
I'm 13 years old, actually, and I've started martial arts. Yeah.
Flipping hell, 13 years old, and you're already at the World Championships earning medals like that. Flipping hell, there'll be people double your age, don't even stand a chance. So so how old were you when you started training?
I was actually quite young. I was 4 years old, and I've been doing it for about 9 or 10 years now, and I hope to do it as well in the future.
Wow. And I'm expecting that your parents have been supportive.
Yeah, my parents have obviously been there since day one. Like ever since I was 4, my mum signed me up for karate, and then my mum and dad have both been taking me to from karate. They've always been supporting me. At championships, they've always been like by my side and encouraging me before I go on to perform. So they've always been like a rock for me.
Oh, that's fantastic. Yeah, fantastic. Yeah. And what part of karate do you find challenging, and how do you stay focused during your competitions?
Well, one part I probably find challenging is mostly the fitness aspect, because sometimes we do a lot of fitness training and it can get a bit tiring. And one part I find challenging would be that.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that's fantastic. Yeah. And how did you feel when you won your championship?
I felt pretty happy, honestly. Like I was really ecstatic. Obviously the adrenaline of winning a medal and just like showing to everyone that I won. Like I was the one that came on top, and even just winning any medal or competing, even coming out without a medal, was still a really big thing for me. That even just gone to the mat and performed at my best.
And what are your future plans then? I'm supposing there'll be a couple of more competitions and hopefully more medals on the way.
Yeah, actually there's one coming up in 2 years, but the location hasn't been decided yet, but I'm hopefully planning to go soon. Planning to go and prepare for it.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic. Yeah. And just give you a final question as well there, Aisha. What message would you like to share to other young athletes who want to be in your position?
So other young athletes, obviously there's a lot of people that are discouraged when it comes to sports, and they think that I'm not athletic enough or I wasn't built for this. But you don't have to be honest. Like even as someone at my age, I felt that it's just people that support you, and even the environment you're in, the motivation, it all helps you to build as a better person and as an athlete. And obviously sports can better you, not just as an athlete, but as a person too. And it gives you much discipline and determination to do better in life as well.
That's fantastic, Aisha. And of course, you're keeping it fun, you're enjoying it as you're doing it, and I think we might even have a potential Olympic champion in the future there.
Hopefully, yeah, in
So
the
fingers
future.
crossed for you, Aisha. And again, fantastic to
Thank
speak
you.
with you. And again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Right. Well, welcome back, Waqar. It was a fantastic young individual from Rochdale there. Just so our viewers are aware, whereabouts are they training and who exactly is responsible for motivating such a young professional in karate and getting her all the way up to the World Championship in Oslo?
Yeah, I mean, like I said to you, I wanted you to introduce somebody like Aisha Rafiq to the world, because it's something that, you know, when people are unsung heroes, it really frustrates me. Frustrates me to the fact that these children grow up with so much talent, and they highlight the talent, but us as individuals, as grown up, as media, we don't give them the limelight which they deserve. So that's the reason you know, she was in the office and Mark is on here, and we will give her airtime. And secondly, she's at the dojo, Rochdale dojo, where she has a fantastic coach and a team. Arfan Ansari, I believe he's called. So he's done a fantastic job with her, and you can obviously see what the team has created. And it's absolutely fantastic to have somebody like Aisha, because I'll be honest with you, there's other youngsters who are going to watch this broadcast and they're going to think, wow, if Aisha can do it, we can do it. And this is hence why I say Aisha is a very big role model to the youth coming up in the future.
As you say, she's a perfect example, not just to other young people who will be motivated by her story and of her achievements, but also a motivating factor to us, not only for us to push beyond what we are capable of, but for us to be able to provide the infrastructure and the services that allow young people to be able to explore their interests, explore their skills, and be able to actually go out there into the world and to make a name for themselves. And I think that's key, that we need to have that support there for young people in order to get people like Aisha, who are driven and are determined and are able to actually go out there and, in her case, win a world championship in karate. Like, I think that's just something that many young people in this country, there'll be many communities that, you know, there'll be a potential world athlete, there'll be a potential genius who's being overlooked simply because the resources are not there to support them. And I think that's something that we need to support, not just locally in Rochdale, but nationally as a party, in order to bring up the next generation of scientists, of athletes, of people in this country who will be able to drive it forward. But
Definitely.
Again, to you, Waqar, what do you believe is needed to be put in place to support people like Aisha?
I mean, I really believe that the local councils, the government should be investing in these kind of projects like the dojo, or people like individuals like Aisha, push other agendas forward, such as sports, youth, especially with the youth. I really believe that the Rochdale Council have completely let the youth down. There's so many facilities that we used to have, a few years back, have been taken away from us. I generally believe that there's been a neglect towards the youth of Rochdale, especially with the central ward. My aim would be, if I do get elected within the council, is to be a voice for the youth and make sure I participate in every aspect where we make sure that their needs are met, and met at a higher level rather than just temporary. I want it to be a permanent thing for our futures for the children, futures for the kids, and the youth of the Central Ward, as well as Rochdale.
And I believe that your campaign is gaining momentum. So do you believe that the opposition might be a bit rattled then in Rochdale, that they might be quivering in their seats, that they might be looking at potentially being out of the job?
To be fair, I've campaigned that much, that I've been on the doors that much. My team, my fantastic team, I've been on the doors. We're more concerned about what the community want. We're more concerned about what our local constituents are asking for. I've not even thought about the Labour Party at all, because that's my opposition. The reason I don't think about it, because I personally believe, let that decision be made by the local public. The local public have obviously adored the fact that our agenda is more public and more local related. We're more concerned about the local issues such as fly tipping, cleaning the alleyways up, bringing the youth bases back, bringing the youth workers back. We're more concerned what's happened to our hospital, our maternity ward, our local infirmary, our local NHS services, things that we were promised, such as the NHS cardiology hub. These are the things that the Labour Party promised, taken away from Rochdale, and nobody has held them accountable for it. And I'll be honest with you, I am ready to put these questions to them. I want the Labour Party or the council to have a meeting with me so I can put myself forward and speak for the public and ask them questions and hold them accountable for things that have been neglected or not been put through as they were told. The promises have been broken. Local residents don't appreciate that. When we're going on the doors, people are opening the doors and they're really happy to speak to us. My team has been on every single door at least 2 or 3 times over the past 8 months. It's not like we're only coming out during the election time and asking for votes. We've been out there for the past year, and the local residents have seen us day in, day out. And they know we're not here just for a career. We're here to help the local community.
So it's looking like your campaign is getting off to a fiery start, and as well, by the sounds of it, the responses have been pretty positive so far from the local community. But what is it that you really want to focus on for this particular ward?
My focus is purely the promises that have been broken. We hold people accountable, and we bring this council to where they should be. Like as I mentioned, NHS is a massive step for myself. I want the NHS to be invested in. I want the government, the central government, to bring in funding for our local services. I want the Rochdale Infirmary back. I want the maternity ward back, minimum. If they don't give us that, at least give us what they promised us when they took the infirmary away from us, that they're going to give us a cardiology hub of excellence. So the purpose of that was people can come here and study the heart rate and heart departments, and also the cardiology side of things. But they've not given us anything, and we have been given and never been given anything back. And that's what my concern is, because if you look at my area, it's been so badly deprived. If you go around the whole borough, whether you're in Middleton, whether you're in Haywood, or whether you come to Rochdale, Smallbridge, Firgrove, when you're looking at my area, it's the most deprived area where people are just making ends meet. It's because there's nothing there for them. Antisocial behaviors on the rise. We've got people who are relying on food banks. We've got people who are out of jobs because there's no jobs being created by this council. So overall, as much as I am an opposition to the local council, I still, I want to put my ideas forward to this council. We have to work together. It doesn't matter whether we're against them. It doesn't matter whether I'm the Workers' Party and they're the Labour Party. If I have my ideas, I want my ideas to be heard. And if my ideas are not being heard, when elected, there will be a big noise, and I will make sure that the central government are here listening to my concerns, because I am not speaking for myself. I am speaking to each and every person from my community, and I am only speaking and only saying the things that they've asked me to say. And this is hence why I want to be leading this community, and I will be leading this community, hopefully, because the momentum is with me. The power is with their council, but we are more than they are, because we are for the workers and we are for the local community.
Well, you're certainly offering a complete alternative for the people of Rochdale, Waqar. But you mentioned there earlier in your talk there about the local hospital. What do you feel about the constant neglect regarding the local hospital in Rochdale?
So, Mark, my mum has been really ill in the past 6 to 10 months. And each time she gets ill, I have to take her to hospital, but I can't take her to Rochdale Hospital because we don't have an infirmary. I have to take her to Middleton and Oldham. But when I take her to Oldham and Middleton, she's put in the corridor for 24 hours. Recently, she had a stroke. And you have to have an injection put on for the stroke within 4 hours. But because she was sitting in the corridor for the next 24 hours, there was no recovery for her. And that's only one example I'm giving you, which I personally find because of my own family. Imagine how many people are being neglected out there through, because the NHS are overwhelmed. They don't have the capacity to make sure that everybody has been adhered to. So this is why I want minimum, at least the Rochdale Infirmary back in Rochdale. minimum, at least a maternity ward. Like I said in my previous broadcast, you can't be born in Rochdale, you can't die in Rochdale. It's like ethnic cleansing, because we cannot be called Rochdalians anymore. How can we, if we're all born in Oldham? So my point is, at least give us the services back that you took away. If you can't give us the services back, at least compensate and give us what you promised, which was a cardiology hub within Rochdale. So that is my concern, and I will carry on fighting for the rights of the Rochdale constituents.
You're right, Waqar, and I think there's many people up and down the country whose experiences within the NHS where it's been cut to the bone, where they've seen loved ones who are either left on trolleys or deceased, or end up basically having going into hospital relatively healthy and ended up coming out worse for wear, or don't even come back out at all. Like, there's many people who are very much in the same boat and want an end to this constantly cutting of the NHS, both on a national as well as a local level. I mean, even in my local area, in regards to Rake Lane Hospital, most of the time when you go there for pretty much anything, they'll either send you all the way up to Cramlington, or they'll send you all the way up to the RVI in Newcastle, which half the time you wonder why you bother sitting in A&E for that many hours when they just boot you out of it anyway. And I think that's the story that's been repeated again and again in every hospital across the country. But like you say, you individually are standing up for the people of Rochdale, and they should have the right to be able to use the hospital and, as you say, be able to be born in the town that they live in, rather than having to be born down the road in Oldham. But you've mentioned, I believe in a couple of previous broadcasts, as well as in some of your social media, that you want a referendum for Rochdale. What do you mean by that?
Right, Mark, I wanted to discuss this point, but I will not discuss this point purely on the basis that this is going to be my Workers' Party main manifesto. So because the hierarchy have advised me not to mention the plans to that, so I will leave that to the higher level of management to start that in our manifesto once it's been discussed with the head of the Workers' Party, and then at a local level I will be discussing it further. But before you do go, I just wanted to mention one little thing which has practically hurt me. I'm upset about it because, you know, like I keep on mentioning about youth. Youth is very important. Like, for example, I was, you know, we had Aisha on the program because she's done something that's amazing. But the toddlers and the ones that are growing up, there was a park made in my area, in my ward. It was made on top of just off Whitworth Road. And when my brother used to be a councillor at that time, he was promised that this park is going to be expanded. There's going to be more facilities. There'll be a gym put in there. There'll be all sorts of facilities put in there. And it was also designed by the local school, which was Greenbank School. But my brother had left the party at the time. He left the council at the time. And recently I've been there. And guess what's made on the park? The whole park has been taken down, and there's a HMO made over there. So how is that fair on the children of the ward? How is that fair on the parents of the ward? And this is just one example I'm giving you. And if I go around the whole area, there's so many things that have been taken away from the local community that the list is so big that I won't even have the time to speak on this broadcast about it. But one thing will happen. It will be on every single agenda I was and every single leaflet I was, the neglect and the poor management of this local council, which we really want to fix up as soon as possible.
Well, I think there's many people, like you say, who are tired of their local communities being neglected by the councils and the councillors that are supposed to be there serving them. And yourself, having experienced this firsthand in Rochdale, I think you are providing a genuine alternative that gives your local community hope and gives them a voice and allows them to be listened to, rather than the usual, you know, local election guff that comes out of the Labour Party, where they promise the world and then deliver nothing. I think a genuine alternative that you are putting forward to the people in Rochdale is very much needed, and I think will be very much appreciated by your local community. But that's all we've got time for tonight, Waqar. I thank you for your time, and myself and many others will be interested to see where you go and what that secret announcement will be in the future. So we'll keep an eye out and an ear out in regards to that. And we'll wish you all the best for the future. And of course, we wish Aisha all the best for her future in regards to a world, hopefully, not just world championship, but Olympic champion going forward.
Thank you so much for having us on the program. And I do appreciate yourself highlighting Aisha, because it's an unsung hero. And I think this is the first platform that's going to go to millions. And I really do appreciate the fact that somebody who's from our constituency is getting highlighted by our party. Obviously, she is not affiliated with any political party. She is just an unsung hero who loves her sport, and she's going to continue doing what she's doing. So she's not affiliated with the Workers' Party or any political party. All that is, she's working hard in the local community, and she's a role model, which I wanted to make sure that she's highlighted. That's all.
Well, appreciate your time, Waqar, and Aisha's time as well. And again, thank you both for coming on.
Thank you for having us. Thank you. Take care.
And if what you've heard this evening has motivated you to get involved, then visit workerspartygb.org and click the Become a Candidate link to submit your application. Also, our campaign talk shows on our only weekly show in town. We also have our weekly NHS broadcasts, so tune in 5 p.m. this and every Sunday on Twitter X for our regular Call the Doctor space, hosted by our own Deputy Leader, Chris Williamson, with the eminent Dr. Bob Gill. If you can't make that, you can watch it on Catch Up on the Workers' Party YouTube, Rumble, Facebook and Twitter X. Finally, I want to thank every single person who tuned in and engaged with this broadcast. If you agree with what you've heard tonight, share this video. Let your friends, family and colleagues know there is a genuine alternative. And again, thank you all for joining us.